Kamikaze. So Eminem is an artist. I'm sure we're all familiar with his work. He personally served as my introduction into hip hop. You do the math for that one. I have no idea why. Um, but he's generally regarded as one of the greatest rappers of all time. Now, regardless of whether you agree with this or not, um, it's pretty hard to disagree with the statement that the past few years in Eminem's career haven't really been the best for him. Um, in particular, I'm talking about here his 2017 album Revival, which was generally regarded as one of the worst albums of 2017, and that's a consensus I'd have to agree with personally. Um, and I don't really want to go too deeply into this, but it's very important that we acknowledge this before going into reviewing this new album from him, because this new album from Eminem, Kamikaze, is, for all intents and purposes, a response to the criticism he received off the back of Revival. In fact, this is actually directly addressed many times throughout this new album, most notably on the skit poll, which is not only a callback to Eminem's old work, as well as, I guess, a way of breaking up any potential monotony that might come with the way that Eminem's going at you again and again and again and again, particularly at the front end of the track listing, which is where this skit comes. But it also just so happens to be a very funny moment on here, which I quite enjoy for what it is. And because the way Eminem starts here on this album, the way that he's going at you just constantly, you can tell there's definitely, I suppose, some anger there. He seems quite spiteful. And this is, again, I suppose, a reaction to the criticism that he got off the back of Revival. It starts well here. The opening track, The Ringer, is maybe, I suppose the beat is a bit basic. It drags on a little bit, but I really enjoy the way that Eminem's rapping on here. Same with Greatest. Greatest is a really good track. It's very enjoyable. And while there's some corny lines on here, and M does sound somewhat bitter, I suppose, I'll take angry, spiteful Eminem any day of the week over the directionless, confused Eminem which we had on Revival. Eminem, throughout his career, has always performed best when his back is against the wall and when he feels, I suppose, like the whole world is against him. And I think that that definitely shines through on this album, at least for the most part. The way Eminem's rapping, he sounds angry, he sounds hungry, he sounds like he has a point to prove. And I really like that, because as someone who would consider themselves a fan of Eminem, it's really encouraging to see him rapping this way and I suppose just taking aim at people. The track Lucky You, I really enjoy. Joyner Lucas is someone who I found to be, I guess, quite corny in the past. But he comes through on here with a very good verse. He sounds angry and he matches Eminem's, I guess he matches Eminem's energy on here. But following the aforementioned skit Paul, is the track Normal. I enjoy it and I enjoy it for what it is, but at the same time I find the way Eminem's rapping on here about relationships and such. I can't get out of my head that he's in his mid-40s at this point, and no matter how he puts it across and talks about, they've both got records and they've both flawed people, I don't find it terribly interesting. The track Stepping Stone, I really like how personal Eminem gets on here, and I really like the way that he talks about D12 and I suppose their relationships, but I do feel like maybe it drags on a little bit long. It starts to get a bit tiresome. And there's a moment mid to late way through the track where Eminem sounds like he's speaking through one of those voice changes that you'd have when you were a little kid, and it put your voice back out and you'd sound like you were a robot or something. It sounds like he has like 3 or 4 filters over his voice, and it just doesn't work too well. But the track overall, it's a good track, it's enjoyable. Same with Normal. They're not bad tracks, they're tracks I enjoy, but I feel like, as is the case with so much of what's on this album, even when you enjoy a song, even when you feel like there's some really great moments on it, there's something just holding it back a bit. There's maybe some corny lines in there, there's maybe a hook that's a bit weaker than it could be. There's just little things on this album, or on songs on this album, which just tend to hold back songs from being the best they possibly could be. I really enjoy the song Not Alike featuring Royce da 5'9". The hook's quite funny. I suppose maybe it gets old a bit quick, but it's a funny hook. I enjoy the track. Kamikaze is very good. Just the way Eminem's rapping on here, it goes really well with the beat. The track progresses very nicely, especially near the end. where he's just going at you again and again and again. And this actually fades in very well to the next song on the album, Fall. And this is the point now in the track listing, Fall, where I can't really go reviewing this album without addressing the unfortunate Tyler the Creator diss on here, where Eminem essentially implies that Tyler the Creator, coming out as bisexual on his last album and since, was merely a ploy to drum up interest in his last album and in him as a person. It comes off as petulant at the very least, and depending on how you view it, borderline homophobic. And honestly, this is a pretty good example of how on this album, while certainly being enjoyable and being packed full of really great moments, especially on the front end of the track listing, which remind you why you got into Eminem's music in the first place, it's very clumsy, and there's usually, with more or less every song in here, just a little something holding it back from being the best it possibly could be. You know, it's certainly much more enjoyable than Revival. The lyrics on here are far better, far less corny, or at least there's far less corny lines on here. And you do feel like if Eminem's to progress further in his career, he needs to improve. He needs to improve because at the moment, while this is an album which I like and which I enjoy, he's merely treading water on here, which admittedly is better than what he was doing on Revival, which was taking 10 steps back. But again, it's not really good enough because the execution just isn't quite there. So following on from Fall, we have two tracks, Nice Guy and Good Guy, featuring Jessie Reyes. I think that's how you pronounce her name, maybe Jessie Reyes. It's another example of just having forced in female pop vocals, which just, I don't feel like it suits Eminem. It feels really forced. I don't get why these songs are on here. They don't really fit with the theme of the album at all. Yeah, I'm confused as to why they're on here, but there we are. So after these two songs, Nice Guy and Good Guy, which make me question whether or not Eminem is an incel, we come to the final song on the album, Venom, which I'm sorry, it feels like a cop-out. It feels like a massive cop-out. And that's not to say I don't enjoy the song at all or that I dislike the song, because I don't dislike the song. But I mean, look, it's part of a movie soundtrack. Eminem's tone on here, as well as the very overly dramatic hook, it's very difficult to take seriously, and I think if you're to enjoy the song, you kind of have to take it in the same way as an adult WWE fan might approach that, because it's not something you can really take seriously. And this song, it feels like a missed opportunity, because I really think that Eminem, fitting with the tone of this album for the most part, he could have gone for something really dramatic, aggressive, and just far more impactful than what he did. I really think that it was a massive missed opportunity here, you know, and honestly, a massive cop out. Because I definitely feel like M could have come through with a really just a fittingly conclusive, impactful ending to the album, which I think would have just made it so much more satisfying of a listen. And I think that just overall, it's not a bad song by any means, but it feels like a missed opportunity. And that's what I have to say about the album, really. I do like on here the way, especially at the start of the album, it feels like Eminem, he has a point to prove. He's not just directionless and aimless as he was in Revival. And I really like the aggression that he shows, or at least just the content that he has. And even if this anger feels misplaced, or as if Eminem is somewhat bitter, almost as if he misses when hip hop was rapping, M clearly realizes that he's no longer the driving force in hip hop, and the feelings of contempt towards so-called mumble rappers. When you take into account that Mike Wilmeda and Tay Keith are both credited on this album as producers, there's certainly more than a shade of irony to it. I do find it quite funny how Eminem is at the same time quite seemingly angry at the state of hip hop on here, or at least that the way that hip hop is right now doesn't seem to be very inclusive towards him, and yet he's trying to fit in as much as he can do. So again, this album overall, I enjoy it, even if I do feel like it's not really as good as it maybe could be. I do feel as if that if Eminem was maybe a bit more thorough on here, a few of the songs were taken off, and it was just overall, if the execution was better, I do feel like this album could be far better than what it is. But at the same time, I enjoy it for what it is. It's not great, it's not bad. I'd give it like a 6 out of 10. As far as my favorite tracks on here, I'd probably say Greatest, Lucky You, and Kamikaze. And I think I'm going to leave it at that. Um, I'd like to hear what you think of the album. So, like, say in the comments, whatever. Any likes on the video or shares or whatever the fuck, I would appreciate that. Again, if you think I'm an idiot, let me know. That's cool. I don't care. Or well, maybe I do care. If you have something to say to me, please do. Again, overall, that's really all I have to say here. That's it.